The galaxy had been at peace for 800 cycles. 47 different species lived together under the Concordat, a grand alliance that stretched across thousands of star systems. They traded goods, shared knowledge, and settled their rare disputes through careful negotiation. War was almost forgotten, a relic of ancient times before civilization learned better ways. Space travel was safe and predictable. Ships jumped between stars using drives that bent space itself, folding distances that would take lifetimes into journeys of mere days. Weapons existed, of course. Plasma cannons that superheated gas into deadly bolts and railguns that fired metal slugs at incredible speeds. But defensive shields had become so advanced that battles dragged on for years, neither side able to land a killing blow. War had become more ritual than real danger. Everyone knew about antimatter. The schools taught children how matter and antimatter destroyed each other completely when they touched, releasing pure energy in amounts that defied imagination. But antimatter was also universally feared. 600 years ago, the Karathi Empire had tried to harness it for power. Their experiment went wrong, and their moon simply vanished in a flash of light that could be seen across half their solar system. After that disaster, every species in the galaxy agreed antimatter was too dangerous to ever use. It remained a theoretical curiosity, discussed by scientists but never actually produced in meaningful quantities. Ambassador Thelnara of the Vryn species stood on the bridge of her survey vessel, watching the stars drift past the viewport. Her scaled skin shimmered blue-green in the soft lighting, and her 4 eyes tracked multiple data streams simultaneously. The Vryn were known across the galaxy as the most patient explorers, cataloging new worlds with meticulous care. This mission was routine: chart the outer arms of the galaxy, record any interesting stellar phenomena, and return home in 3 cycles. Ambassador, we're detecting unusual readings, her sensor operator announced, breaking the comfortable silence. Thelnara's head turned toward the tactical display. What kind of readings? Energy signatures. Very powerful. Coming from System 77394. The operator's fingers danced across his console. Wait, that's interesting. The system has a species with early space travel. They just achieved faster-than-light capability within the last solar cycle. A new species? Thelnara felt a flutter of excitement. First contact was rare and special. Set course. Initiate standard greeting protocols. The survey vessel entered the system the locals called Sol, home to a yellow star and several planets. Long-range scans identified the species quickly. Bipedal, bilateral symmetry, carbon-based. They called themselves humans. Their homeworld, Earth, orbited third from the star, a beautiful sphere of blue oceans and green continents wrapped in white clouds. What caught Thelnara's attention was their space fleet. For such a young species, they had built an impressive number of vessels, sleek ships with angular designs quite different from the flowing curves most species favored. 30 military vessels and hundreds of civilian craft moved between their homeworld and neighboring planets. Hail them, Thelnara ordered. Standard first contact frequency. The response came quickly. The humans seemed eager to talk, their transmission filled with mathematical proofs of peaceful intent and basic concepts rendered in universal symbols. Within hours, both sides had established rudimentary translation software. Within days, they were having actual conversations. The humans invited Thelnara to visit one of their vessels, a destroyer they called the Resolute. She accepted, bringing a small team of scientists and diplomats. As her shuttle approached the human ship, she marveled at its design. Clean lines, minimal ornamentation, purely functional. The humans who greeted her were fascinating. They stood upright on 2 legs, with 2 arms and expressive faces that broadcast their emotions openly. Their leader, Captain Rodriguez, smiled broadly and extended his hand in what Thelnara's database identified as a gesture of friendship. She awkwardly mimicked the motion, and the captain's smile grew wider. "Welcome to the Resolute," Rodriguez said through the translation device. "We're honored to meet you. Your people are our first contact with alien life." Thelnara's translator worked both ways. "The honor is ours. Your species has achieved much in a short time." The tour of the ship was enlightening. Human technology was crude in some ways. Their computers were bulky, their life support systems inefficient, but they compensated with clever engineering and redundant systems. Everything was built to be repaired and maintained, designed by people who expected things to break and needed to fix them quickly. Then Thelnara's personal scanner began chirping urgently. She glanced at the small device clipped to her belt, and all four of her eyes widened in shock. The energy readings were impossible. She must be reading it wrong. "Captain," she said carefully, "may I ask what powers your ship?" Rodriguez looked puzzled by the question. "Our reactor? It's a standard matter-antimatter annihilation drive. We've been using them for about 50 years now." "Why do you ask?" Thelnara's translator almost failed to process her response. Her words came out in a stammering mess. Antimatter? You use antimatter?" "Well, yes." Rodriguez seemed confused by her reaction. "It's the most efficient energy source we've discovered. 1 gram of antimatter reacting with 1 gram of matter produces the same energy as a massive fusion bomb, but we can control it. Our magnetic containment systems are very reliable." "Reliable?" Thelnara's voice rose higher than she intended. "Captain, antimatter destroyed the Kraathi moon. It's banned across the entire galaxy. How can you possibly use it safely?" Now it was Rodriguez's turn to look shocked. "Banned, but it's just physics. Yes, it's dangerous if mishandled, but we have extensive safety protocols, multiple redundant containment fields, emergency ejection systems, fail-safes on the fail-safes. We haven't had a serious incident in decades." Thelnara's mind raced. She pulled up her scanner data and ran it again. The readings were correct. The ship she stood on contained enough antimatter to vaporize a small moon. And according to her long-range sensors, every single human military vessel used the same power source. The civilian ships, too. An entire species had built their civilization on technology the rest of the galaxy considered suicidal. "How many ships use these reactors?" she asked quietly. "All of them," Rodriguez answered simply. "Every ship we've built since we figured out how to manufacture and store antimatter safely. It's the only practical way to power faster-than-light drives with our current technology. Is there a problem?" Thelnara looked at the human captain's open, honest face. He genuinely didn't understand why she was terrified. To him, antimatter was just another tool like fire or electricity. Dangerous if misused, but controllable with proper care. "Captain Rodriguez," she said slowly, "I need to return to my ship and report this to the Concordat Council. They need to know about your species and your technology immediately." "Of course." Rodriguez smiled again. "We're looking forward to joining the galactic community. There's so much we want to learn and share." As Thelnara's shuttle flew back to her survey vessel, she couldn't stop her hands from shaking. The humans seemed kind, curious, and peaceful, but they had casually accomplished what every other species in the galaxy considered impossible. They had tamed antimatter, and they didn't even realize how terrifying that made them. The Concordat central sphere hung in deep space, far from any star system. It was a massive station, home to thousands of diplomats, bureaucrats, and staff from all 47 member species. Usually the sphere hummed with quiet efficiency, processing treaties and trade agreements at a leisurely pace. Today, chaos reigned. Ambassador Thelnara stood before the full council, her presentation playing on holographic displays around the circular chamber. Every seat was filled. Representatives who normally sent assistants to routine meetings had come in person. The emergency session had been called within hours of her report, bypassing the usual months of scheduling and preparation. "Let me be clear," Thelnara said, her voice steady despite her exhaustion. "Every human vessel uses controlled antimatter reactions for power. Not experimental ships, not military prototypes. Every single ship in their fleet, civilian and military alike." Counselor Dravik of the Hexaron Collective raised one of his 6 arms. "Ambassador, your sensors must be malfunctioning. No species could develop antimatter containment without destroying themselves in the process." "I ran diagnostics 3 times, Thelnara replied. "My equipment functioned perfectly. I also obtained technical documentation from the humans themselves." They were happy to share. They see nothing unusual about their technology. The chamber erupted in overlapping voices, clicks, whistles, growls, and spoken words in dozens of languages. The translation system struggled to keep up. Thelnara caught fragments. Impossible. Reckless. Insane. Dangerous. High Counselor Marnseth, an ancient Vrekan whose species had founded the Concordat, raised her crystalline hand for silence. Her voice carried the weight of centuries. "We must approach this rationally. War Tactician Zrix, you've reviewed Ambassador Thelnara's data. What is your analysis? Zrix of the Mole Corps Coalition stood. The Mole Corps were warriors by nature, and Zrix had planned defensive strategies for the Concordat for 30 years. His reptilian features showed no emotion as he activated his own display. I ran combat simulations based on the energy readings, Zrix began. A single human destroyer carries more potential destructive power than an entire Concordat battle fleet. If they've weaponized antimatter the way they've harnessed it for power, our current military doctrine is obsolete. Silence fell across the chamber. Several counselors exchanged worried glances. Surely they haven't weaponized it, someone said from the back. That would be insane even by their standards. Zrix's eyes were cold. They tamed antimatter for peaceful use. Do you truly believe they lack the imagination to turn it into weapons? These are the same beings who split their own atoms and built bombs that could destroy cities before they ever left their homeworld. Violence is written into their history. That was their past, Thelnara interjected. They've changed. I spoke with them extensively. They unified their world after nearly destroying it in nuclear war. They learned from their mistakes. Or they learned to make bigger weapons, muttered Counselor Bryn of the Talrex. High Counselor Marnzeth raised her hand again. The question before us is simple. What do we do about humanity? I see 3 options. First, we welcome them as members and hope their intentions remain peaceful. Second, we quarantine their system and forbid contact. Third, we demand they decommission their antimatter technology as a condition of joining the Concordat. The debate that followed lasted for hours. The chamber divided into factions almost immediately. Councillor Vresh of the Mirani led the conservative faction. We cannot allow this technology to spread. If even one human ship has an accident, entire worlds could die. We must demand they return to conventional power sources. And if they refuse, asked Councillor Lear of the Zenthari, do we enforce this demand with military action? Against beings who could vaporize our fleets? They have only 30 military vessels, Vresh countered. We could assemble thousands. Numbers would overwhelm them. Zrix shook his head slowly. Counselor, you don't understand modern human warfare. I accessed their historical databases. They shared freely. Humans don't fight the way we do. They don't engage in years-long sieges. They strike hard and fast, seeking decisive victories. In their most recent global conflict, they ended the war by using atomic weapons so devastating that their enemies surrendered rather than face more. That was with primitive fission bombs. Imagine what they could do with antimatter. The progressive faction, led by Councillor Intar of the Sivri, offered a different perspective. Fear is no basis for policy. The humans seem peaceful. They've been nothing but cooperative. Perhaps we should learn from them rather than condemn them. Learn to play with antimatter? Fresh's voice dripped with scorn. Learn to juggle singularities while we're at it? They've survived 50 years with this technology without incident, Intar replied. Perhaps their safety protocols are better than we imagine. Thelnara listened to the arguments go in circles. Finally, she requested permission to speak again. Counselors, I propose we simply talk to them honestly. Explain our concerns. Request they limit their antimatter production and share their safety protocols. They may not even realize how much they frighten us. It was a compromise, and like most compromises, it satisfied no one completely. But after hours of debate, the Council voted to send humanity a formal, diplomatic message outlining the Concordat's concerns and requesting they voluntarily decommission their antimatter drives in exchange for Concordat membership and access to conventional fusion technology. The message was sent. The response came 3 days later. Admiral Sarah Chen's face appeared on the communication screen, her features calm but firm. She wore a dark blue uniform with simple insignia. Behind her, through a viewport, a human destroyer drifted in space. Members of the Concordat Council, Chen began. We've received your message and discussed it at length among our governments. We appreciate your concerns about antimatter technology. We truly do. However, we cannot accept your terms. Murmurs of shock rippled through the chamber. Chen continued. Antimatter power has transformed human civilization. It's enabled us to reach other stars, to build colonies, to dream of a future among the stars. To abandon it would be like asking you to forget how to use fire. More than that, it would be abandoning the thing that makes us who we are. Our refusal to fear technology simply because it's powerful. You nearly destroyed yourselves with nuclear weapons, Councillor Vresh interrupted. Your own history proves you can't be trusted with such power. Chen's expression hardened slightly. Counselor, we nearly destroyed ourselves, yes. And that taught us the most important lesson in our history. We learned that great power demands great responsibility. We didn't ban nuclear weapons, we learned to control them, to use them for power generation and space propulsion. We don't hide from dangerous technology, we master it. Your arrogance will kill you all, Vresh said coldly. Perhaps, Chen acknowledged, but it will be our choice, our risk. We're willing to share our safety protocols. We're willing to help any species brave enough to attempt antimatter technology, but we won't disarm simply because our power makes you uncomfortable. High Counselor Marnzeth leaned forward. Admiral, surely you understand our position. The galaxy has lived in peace for centuries. Your technology threatens that peace. With respect, High Counselor, your peace is built on stalemate, Chen replied. Your weapons can't overcome your defenses, so wars drag on until everyone gets tired. That's not peace, that's exhaustion. We're not looking for war. We came to the stars to explore and learn. But we won't make ourselves helpless to satisfy your fear. The transmission ended. The council chamber sat in stunned silence. What do we do now? Someone asked quietly. Before anyone could answer, a new alert flashed across every console. A message from the Brintix Dominion. A militant species from the Concordate's outer rim. Counselor Breck of the Brintix stood, his insectoid features unreadable. The Dominion has heard enough. These humans are a threat that must be neutralized. We're assembling a fleet to enter their system and disable their antimatter technology by force. We invite any member species to join us in protecting the galaxy. Thelnara's heart sank. Counselor, please. There must be another way. There is no other way, Breck replied. Sometimes peace requires strength. We'll show these humans they're not as powerful as they think. As Breck's hologram vanished, Thelnara looked at the empty space where Admiral Chen's face had been moments before. She'd seemed so confident, so certain of humanity's abilities. Thelnara hoped that confidence wasn't misplaced. Because in 7 days, the Brintix were going to test it with 200 warships. And the galaxy was about to learn what happened when you threatened humanity. The Brintix war fleet assembled at the edge of their territory, a massive gathering of military might. 200 vessels from nimble frigates to massive dreadnoughts arranged themselves in the traditional battle formation that had served the Dominion for 500 years. Counselor Breck stood on the bridge of the flagship Inevitable Victory, watching the fleet arrange itself with satisfaction. Commander Vexelar, Breck said to his military leader, are all vessels ready? Vexelar was a veteran of a dozen campaigns. His exoskeleton bore scars from boarding actions and near misses. Yes, Counselor. 200 ships fully armed and crewed. Against 30 human vessels, we have overwhelming advantage. Do not underestimate them, Breck warned. They have antimatter, which means nothing if they're destroyed before they can use it. Vexelar gestured at the tactical display. Our plan is sound. We jump into their system in battle formation. We stay at maximum range and bombard them with plasma fire until their shields fail. If they try to close to weapons range, we jump away and attack from a different angle. We have more ships, more experience, and patience. Eventually, they'll be forced to surrender. Breck considered this. It was traditional concordate warfare. Stay at safe distance, wear down the enemy, avoid unnecessary risk. It had worked for centuries. Very well. Give the order. Jump to Sol system on my command. Space folded. And 200 Brintix warships appeared in humanity's home system like vengeful ghosts. Admiral Chen was in the command center on Mars when the alert started screaming. 200 hostile vessels had just materialized at the system's edge, well beyond the orbit of Pluto. Every military installation in the Sol system went to battle stations. Get me a channel to those ships, Chen ordered, and scramble the fleet. Battle formation Delta 7. The 30 human destroyers and frigates that had been on patrol duty began accelerating toward the intruders. They moved fast. Antimatter drives could push ships to tremendous speeds when necessary. Chen's communication officer shook his head. Admiral, they're not responding to hails. Keep trying. Chen watched the tactical display. The Brintix fleet was spreading out, creating a loose sphere. A siege formation. They planned to surround and bombard. Weapons, confirm all ships are armed and ready. Confirmed, Admiral. All vessels report green status on antimatter torpedoes and beam cannons. Hold fire unless fired upon, Chen ordered. They might still be willing to talk. Commander Vexillar watched the human ships approach on his display. They moved in a tight formation, protecting each other's flanks. Professional, at least. "Hail them," he ordered. A human face appeared on his screen. Admiral Chen, her expression hard but controlled. "Brintix vessels, you've entered human space in a hostile formation. Withdraw immediately, or we will consider this an act of war." Vexillar kept his voice cold. "Admiral Chen, the Concordat has determined your species poses a threat to galactic peace. Surrender your vessels and decommission your antimatter technology, or we will do it for you." "Commander," Chen said slowly, "I strongly advise you to reconsider. You don't understand what you're dealing with. I understand perfectly. You have 30 ships. We have 200. Surrender now or face destruction." Chen's eyes hardened. "Commander Vexillar, you've made a terrible mistake." The channel closed. Vexillar turned to his weapons officer. "Open fire. All vessels, maximum range bombardment. Wear them down." Plasma bolts began lancing across space. Superhot gas contained in magnetic fields traveling at a fraction of light speed. Standard Concordat weaponry. The Brintix had centuries of experience with these weapons. They knew exactly how much damage each shot could do, how long it would take to overwhelm shields and hull armor. The human formation didn't scatter. Instead, they tightened up, overlapping their shield coverage. The plasma impacts splashed across blue-white energy barriers, dissipating harmlessly. "Their shields are strong," Vexillar's weapons officer reported, "but not unusually so. At this rate, we'll breach them in approximately 6 hours." 6 hours was good. Quick for a Concordat battle. Vexillar allowed himself a moment of satisfaction. "Continue firing. Maintain formation. Don't let them get close." On the bridge of the human flagship Indomitable, Admiral Chen watched the plasma bolts splash against their shields. They were annoying, nothing more. The antimatter reactor could power shields strong enough to withstand this bombardment for days. "Admiral, the Brintix are maintaining maximum range," her tactical officer reported. "They're trying to stay safe while they wear us down." Chen nodded. "It was a sensible strategy, if you didn't know what you were dealing with. Target their dreadnoughts, antimatter torpedoes. Firing solution Alpha 1. Admiral?" Her weapons officer looked uncertain. "That's our heavy ordnance." "Are you sure?" "They attacked us in our own system," Chen said flatly. "They threatened Earth, I'm sure. Fire when ready." Space rippled as launch tubes opened on 15 human destroyers. 15 torpedoes, each containing 1 gram of antimatter suspended in a magnetic containment field, shot forward at tremendous acceleration. They were small, hard to track, and fast, much faster than the lumbering plasma bolts the Brintix used. Commander Vexillar saw them on his sensors. "Incoming missiles. Point defense, shoot them down." The Brintix fleet's defensive lasers began firing, trying to intercept the torpedoes. They hit 3. 12 continued on. "Impact in 10 seconds, the sensor officer reported. "Wait. Those energy readings. Commander, those aren't normal missiles." The first torpedo reached its target, a Brintix dreadnought 3 times the size of a human destroyer. The magnetic containment field collapsed on purpose. 1 gram of antimatter touched 1 gram of matter. Einstein's famous equation, energy equals mass times the speed of light squared, played out in devastating reality. The dreadnought vanished. Not exploded, not destroyed, simply ceased to exist, replaced by an expanding sphere of gamma radiation and plasma hotter than the core of a star. The ship literally converted to pure energy in a microsecond. 11 more dreadnoughts followed in the next 3 seconds. On the inevitable victory, every alarm began screaming at once. Radiation warnings, thermal warnings, shields overloading from the sheer energy released by the explosions. "Report," Vexillar shouted over the chaos. 12 dreadnoughts destroyed." His sensor officer's voice was panicked. "Counselor Breck's ship gone. Those weren't missiles, Commander. Those were antimatter warheads." "Direct matter antimatter annihilation." Vexillar felt his blood turn cold. They'd weaponized it. These insane humans had actually weaponized antimatter. "All ships, evasive maneuvers." Jumped it. Another wave of torpedoes appeared on sensors. 20 this time. Then 30 more. The human ships were launching everything they had. The Brintix fleet tried to scatter, tried to jump away. But jumps took time to charge. Time they didn't have. Explosions ripped through the Brintix formation. Not the slow, spreading explosions of plasma or kinetic weapons. Instant annihilation there one moment, gone the next. Fireballs that made their own light visible from Mars. The human ships closed in. They weren't running, they were hunting. Vexlar watched his fleet die on the tactical display. Decades of military experience told him nothing. All his knowledge of concordate warfare was useless. The rules had changed. All ships, full retreat. Emergency jump, any heading, just get out. But the humans had one more surprise. As the Brintic ships began their jump sequences, human destroyers fired their beam weapons. Focused streams of energy, powered by antimatter reactors concentrated through magnetic focusing systems, cut through Brintic shields like they weren't there. The beams didn't explode ships. They simply cut them apart. A frigate split in half, its atmosphere venting into space. A dreadnought lost its entire forward section, the crew compartments exposed to vacuum. Another ship's reactor went critical and exploded conventionally, almost gentle compared to the antimatter weapons. Some Brintic ships managed to jump away, perhaps 80 vessels fleeing in all directions, their formations shattered. Commander Vexlar's ship was one of them. As space folded and they escaped to safety, he stared at his tactical display in horror. 120 ships, gone, just gone. The engagement had lasted 4 minutes and 23 seconds. Back in Sol system, Admiral Chen surveyed the battlefield. Debris fields where Brintic ships had been, radiation readings slowly dissipating. Her fleet was intact, every single human ship undamaged except for some minor shield stress. Admiral, we're receiving a transmission, her communications officer said. It's from the Concordate Council. They're requesting an immediate ceasefire and negotiations. Chen looked at the empty space where the Brintic's fleet had been. She thought about Commander Vexlar's final transmission, barely coherent. Gods help us. They weaponized it all. Tell the council we'll talk, Chen said quietly. But make sure they understand. We didn't start this fight. We ended it. Word of the battle spread across the galaxy at the speed of quantum communication. Every species in the Concordate received the same data. 200 ships versus 30. Battle duration 4 minutes. Brintic's casualties 120 vessels destroyed. Human casualties 0. And beneath those numbers, a new reality. Humans had turned the galaxy's worst nightmare into standard ammunition. The phrase echoed across 1,000 worlds. They weaponized it all. The galaxy had blinked and the Brintics were gone. And everyone knew, cross humanity at your own risk. The Concordate Central Sphere had never been so quiet. In the main council chamber, 47 species sat in silence watching the sensor recordings play again. The Battle of Sol System. 4 minutes and 23 seconds that changed everything. High Counselor Marnzeth finally spoke, her crystalline voice carrying across the chamber. We have all seen the data. Does anyone dispute its accuracy? No one spoke. The evidence was undeniable. 12 Brintic's dreadnoughts had been erased from existence in the first salvo. The energy readings were consistent with matter-antimatter annihilation. The humans hadn't just defended themselves. They had demonstrated complete military superiority. Ambassador Thelnara watched her fellow counselors. She saw fear on many faces, but also something else, calculation. Some were already thinking about what this meant for the balance of power. The question now, Marnzeth continued, is what we do next. The Brintics attacked without full council authorization, but they claimed to act in defense of the Concordate. Now they're shattered and humanity remains untouched. We must respond, but how? War tactician Zrick stood slowly. High Counselor, I've analyzed every tactical detail of the engagement. The humans didn't just win, they demonstrated technologies we didn't know existed. Antimatter torpedoes with yields that dwarf our most powerful weapons. Energy beams that cut through our shields. Reaction times that suggest computer-assisted targeting beyond our capabilities. And most importantly, doctrine that emphasizes decisive engagement over prolonged siege. He paused, letting that sink in. If humanity decided to conquer the Concordate, I estimate they could do it with their current fleet of 30 ships. Not easily and not without losses, but they could do it. Panic rippled through the chamber. Counselor Vresh of the Talrex stood abruptly. Then we must strike now, while they're still weak in numbers. Assemble the full Concordate military, every ship from every member world. 10,000 vessels against their 30. And how many of those 10,000 survive? Zrix asked calmly. The Brintics had overwhelming numerical advantage. It meant nothing. Numbers don't matter when the enemy can destroy your ships faster than you can react. So we do nothing? Fresh demanded. We simply accept that these newcomers are now our masters? They don't want to be our masters, Thelnara interjected. She'd been silent until now, but the conversation was spiraling in dangerous directions. I've spoken with them extensively. They came to explore and learn, not conquer. They say that now, Vresh shot back. But once they build more ships, once they realize their power, history shows that powerful species eventually seek to dominate. Human history shows the opposite, Thelnara replied firmly. Yes, they fought wars. Terrible wars, but they also built the United Nations, the Global Peace Accords, eventually a unified Earth government. They learned to cooperate. They chose peace when they could have chosen conquest. Before the argument could escalate, a communication alert sounded. Admiral Chen was requesting to address the council. Marnzeth authorized the connection. Chen's face appeared on the central hologram, larger than life. She looked tired but determined. Members of the Concordate Council, Chen began without preamble. I know you're trying to decide what to do about us. I'm here to make our position clear. We didn't want the battle that occurred. The Brintics gave us no choice. We defended ourselves and our system. That's all. You destroyed 120 vessels, Councillor Vresh accused. That's not defense, that's slaughter. Chen's expression didn't change. Counselor, they came to our home with 200 warships and demanded our surrender. What would your species have done? We ended the fight as quickly as possible to minimize casualties on both sides. A prolonged battle would have killed more. You speak of minimizing casualties after vaporizing thousands, another counselor muttered. Yes, Chen said flatly. I do, because in war, quick victories save lives overall. The Brintics could have surrendered after the first salvo. They chose to continue fighting. We accommodated their choice. Marnzeth raised her hand for silence. Admiral Chen, what does humanity want from the Concordate? Chen took a breath. The same thing we wanted before the battle. To join you. To trade, share knowledge, and explore the galaxy together. We're not your enemies, but we won't be your victims either. And your antimatter technology? Marnzeth asked. We're willing to share our safety protocols with any species interested in learning. We'll even help develop the technology if you want. But we won't disarm. We won't make ourselves helpless because our power frightens you. Thelnara saw her opening. Admiral, what if we offered a compromise? Humanity joins the Concordate as full members. In exchange, you agree to limit your military buildup and share defensive technologies to help other species protect themselves against external threats. Chen considered this. Define limit our military buildup. No more than 100 military vessels for the next 10 standard cycles. Thelnara suggested. After that, we reassess based on the security situation. And in exchange, we get full Concordate membership, access to all trade routes, all shared technologies, all diplomatic protections. Yes, Chen nodded slowly. I'll need to consult with Earth's government, but that sounds acceptable. Send us the formal proposal. The channel closed. The council chamber erupted in debate. Some councillors were furious at the idea of letting humanity join without complete disarmament. Others were relieved that war might be avoided. Still others saw opportunity. Councillor Dren of the Shivak Consortium spoke up. His species were traders, always thinking 3 steps ahead. If humanity joins the Concordate, their antimatter technology protects us all. Any species that threatens the Concordate threatens them too. We gain the most powerful military force in the galaxy as our defenders. Or we invite a predator into our home, Vresh countered. The predator is already here, Dren replied. The question is whether we make them an ally or an enemy. I know which I prefer. The vote took hours but eventually passed. 32 species voted to accept humanity into the Concordate under Thelnara's proposed terms. 15 voted against. The Brintics, of course, abstained. They were too busy trying to rebuild their shattered fleet to participate. As the session ended, Thelnara felt exhausted but satisfied. Peace had been preserved. Barely. 3 days later, she received a priority communication from her sensors technicians. A new threat had been detected. Beyond Concordate space, in the lawless regions the Council had never bothered to patrol, a massive fleet was assembling. The Krell warlords had heard about the Battle of Sol system, and unlike the Concordate, they saw opportunity where others saw danger. Warlord Grakthor studied the reports from his spies. 200 Brintic ships destroyed in minutes by only 30 human vessels. Antimatter weapons. Incredible power. The Concordate was afraid, ready to surrender without a fight. But Grakthor wasn't afraid. He was excited. The Krell had been raiding Concordate borders for decades. The weak, soft species of the Concordat couldn't stop them. Their long, slow battles meant Krell raiders could strike and vanish before defenders arrived. It was profitable and easy, but the Krell had always been limited by technology. Their ships were fast and tough but lacked the raw power of Concordat dreadnoughts. They won through aggression and surprise, not firepower. Now these humans appeared with weapons beyond anything the galaxy had seen. If Grakthor could capture even one human ship, his engineers could study it, copy it. Krell vessels with antimatter weapons. They'd rule the entire outer rim within a year. Assemble the fleet, Grakthor ordered his subordinates. Every ship we have. I want 800 vessels ready to jump. That's our entire military force, one of his advisors cautioned. If we commit everything and fail, we won't fail, Grakthor interrupted. The humans have only 30 ships. We'll have 800. Even if they're powerful, numbers will overwhelm them. And they won't be ready. They'll be celebrating their victory, not expecting another attack so soon. What's our target? Grakthor pulled up a star chart. Human intelligence shows they've established a new colony. New Horizon, they call it. Only 6 months old. Barely defended. A few frigates at most. We jump in, overwhelm the defenses, capture a ship or two, and leave before the main fleet arrives. Quick raid, maximum profit. It was a good plan. A typical Krell plan: hit the weak point, take what you want, disappear before reinforcements arrive. What Grakthor didn't know was that the Concordat had learned from the Brintic's mistake. Several species, including the Vryn and the Molkor coalition, had decided that humanity was too dangerous to leave unsupported. If someone attacked humans again and lost, it would destabilize the entire galaxy. Ambassador Thelnara sent an encrypted message to Admiral Chen, warning of the Krell fleet, offering Concordat ships to help defend New Horizon. Chen's response was immediate and surprising. Thank you for the warning. If your people want to stand with us, we'll gladly fight alongside you. For the first time in Concordat history, multiple species were preparing to defend newcomers against external threat, not because they had to, because they chose to. The Krell Armada prepared to jump, confident in their numbers and tactics. The humans prepared to defend their colony, backed now by unexpected allies, and the galaxy held its breath, waiting to see what happened when 800 raiders met 30 human warships and the first true alliance between humanity and the Concordat. The Battle of New Horizon would prove whether humanity's power could be controlled, or whether it would consume everything. New Horizon hung against the darkness of space, a beautiful blue-green world that reminded human colonists of Earth. 6 months ago, it had been empty. Now, prefabricated habitats dotted the largest continent, and 15,000 humans called it home. They were farmers, engineers, teachers, doctors, people building a new life among the stars. Commander Maria Santos stood on the bridge of the frigate Defiant, one of 3 human warships assigned to protect the colony. She watched the peaceful planet rotate below and tried not to think about the intelligence report sitting on her console. 800 Krell warships. Heading their way. Expected arrival in 4 hours. Commander, her tactical officer said quietly. We've got confirmation. 40 Concordat vessels just jumped into the system. They're hailing us. Santos felt a flutter of surprise. The Concordat was actually helping? Put them through. Ambassador Thelnara's face appeared on screen. Behind her, Santos could see what looked like a Vryn command ship. Commander Santos, I bring ships from 6 Concordat species. We're here to help defend New Horizon. Ambassador, Santos paused, genuinely moved. Thank you. We weren't sure anyone would come. Many species disagreed with the Brintic's attack, Thelnara replied. We won't allow another unprovoked assault on your people. We stand with you. 43 ships against 800. Santos ran the numbers in her head. It's not great odds, but with your help we might hold out until the main fleet arrives from Earth. Thelnara's expression was uncertain. How long until your reinforcements arrive? 6 days at maximum speed. Commander, the Krell will be here in 4 hours. We may not have 6 days, Santos smiled grimly. Then we'll make sure we last at least 4 hours. Link your tactical systems with ours. Let's plan our defense. As the human and Concordat ships coordinated their positions, a message came through from Earth. Admiral Chen's face appeared, and Santos nearly laughed with relief. Commander Santos, the cavalry's on the way. 50 ships, including the Indomitable. We'll be there in 36 hours. Admiral, the Krell arrive in 4 hours. Then hold the line for 36 hours, Chen said simply. We're pushing our drives to maximum. We'll get there as fast as we can. But Santos? Chen's expression was serious. Those colonists are counting on you. That colony represents everything we're trying to build out here. Don't let it fall. Yes, Admiral. We'll hold. The channel closed. Santos looked at her small fleet. 3 frigates barely armed compared to proper destroyers. And 40 Concordate ships well-meaning but equipped with weapons that took hours to wear down enemy shields. Against 800 Krell raiders, built for speed and aggression. All crew, this is the commander, Santos said over the ship-wide intercom. You've all heard the reports. 800 hostile ships inbound. Our job is simple. We hold this position until the fleet arrives. We protect those colonists. We show the galaxy that humanity doesn't abandon its people. Prepare for combat. Santos out. 4 hours later, space ripped open and the Krell Armada emerged. Warlord Grakthor smiled as his sensors showed the pitiful defense force. 43 ships total, only 3 of them human frigates. This will be easier than I thought. All vessels attack formation. Overwhelm the defenders quickly, then board and capture the human ships. The Krell fleet surged forward like a swarm of angry insects. Their ships were smaller than Concordate dreadnoughts, but fast and numerous. They'd perfected the art of overwhelming defenses through sheer numbers and aggression. Here they come, Santos's tactical officer reported. Estimate contact in 2 minutes. Concordate vessels form defensive screen around New Horizon, Santos ordered. Human ships will be the forward element. Let's give them something to think about. The 3 human frigates accelerated toward the Krell swarm. It looked like suicide. 3 ships against 800. Grakthor laughed when he saw them coming. Brave but stupid. Focus fire on the human ships. I want them disabled, not destroyed. We need them intact. 100 Krell vessels opened fire. Energy weapons and kinetic slugs filled space, converging on the 3 frigates. The human shields flared bright blue as they absorbed the impacts, and held. Shields at 70%, the tactical officer reported. Antimatter reactor compensating. We can take this for a while. Good, Santos said. Return fire. Antimatter torpedoes spread pattern. Show them what we brought to the party. 6 torpedoes launched from the Defiant, targeting the densest part of the Krell formation. They weren't as sophisticated as the weapons on human destroyers, but they were still antimatter warheads. The first torpedo struck a Krell cruiser amidships. The ship vanished in a flash of pure energy. 5 more Krell vessels followed in quick succession. The Krell formation wavered. Grakthor stared at his tactical display in disbelief. 6 ships gone, just like the reports from Sol system. All vessels evasive maneuvers. Don't bunch up! He'd studied the Brintix battle. He knew the humans' weapons were powerful but surely limited. They can't have many of those weapons. Press the attack! But the Krell didn't know about human manufacturing capability. Each frigate carried 30 torpedoes. The 3 frigates began firing systematically, targeting any Krell ship that got too close. Behind them, the Concordate vessels formed a defensive wall. Fringe ships with heavy shields, Mulcore cruisers with their plasma cannons, Synthari frigates darting between larger vessels. They couldn't destroy Krell ships quickly, but they could slow them down, force them to maneuver, keep them away from New Horizon. Ambassador Thelnara watched the battle from her command ship. She'd never seen human ships in extended combat before. They moved with purpose, always in formation, supporting each other. When one frigate's shields weakened, the other 2 moved to cover it. They fought like they'd trained together for years, even though these were just colony defense ships, and the torpedoes kept launching. 1 every 30 seconds from each frigate. Every hit erased a Krell vessel from existence. Grakthor watched his fleet's numbers drop. 50 ships destroyed, then 70, then 90. The 3 human frigates were still fighting, their shields holding despite constant bombardment. Warlord, we're taking unsustainable casualties, his second-in-command warned. We should withdraw. No! Grakthor slammed his fist on his console. We have the numbers. Eventually they'll run out of those weapons or their shields will fail. Press forward. But pressing forward meant exposing his ships to those terrible antimatter weapons. And the human frigates weren't just fighting, they were learning. Their targeting became more efficient. They started using their beam weapons to cripple ships before finishing them with torpedoes, making each warhead count. 6 hours into the battle, the Krell had lost 200 ships. The human frigates had taken damage. The Defiant's shields were down to 30% and the frigate Resolution had lost its forward torpedo tubes, but they were still fighting. The Concordat ships had suffered worse. 18 vessels destroyed, another 12 heavily damaged. But they held the line, refusing to retreat even as Krell weapons tore through their defenses. Commander Santos checked her torpedo count. 8 left. The other frigates were similarly depleted. All ships conserve ammunition. Fire only at clear targets. We need to make every shot count. Commander, message from the colony, her communications officer said. The civilians want to know if they should evacuate. Santos thought about the 15,000 people below. Families. Children. People who'd left Earth to build something new and better. Tell them to shelter in place. We're holding the line. They're safe. But she wasn't sure that was true. The Krell still had 600 ships and her flotilla was running out of weapons. Then space folded and 50 human warships emerged from FTL led by the Indomitable. Admiral Chen saw the battlefield immediately. Debris fields, damaged ships on both sides, 3 frigates fighting desperately against overwhelming odds. And they were still there. Still fighting. All ships combat speed. Formation Alpha strike. Let's finish this. 50 human destroyers, fresh and fully armed, tore into the Krell fleet like sharks into a school of fish. These weren't frigates with limited armament. These were full warships, each carrying 100 antimatter torpedoes and powerful beam weapons. The Krell formation shattered. Grakthor tried to organize a retreat, but the humans were everywhere, moving faster than Krell ships could jump away. They'd learned from the Brintix battle. They targeted jump drives first, crippling ships before destroying them. All vessels scatter, Grakthor ordered desperately. Every ship for themselves. But it was too late. The human fleet moved like a single organism, coordinating attacks, covering each other, methodically dismantling the Krell armada. They weren't angry or vengeful. They were just efficient. 30 minutes after the human fleet arrived, it was over. 600 Krell ships destroyed or disabled. Grakthor's flagship was crippled, its weapons offline and engines dead. Admiral Chen's face appeared on every surviving Krell ship's communication screen. Attention, Krell vessels. This is Admiral Sarah Chen of the Earth Defense Fleet. You attacked a human colony without provocation. You put civilians at risk. This ends now. Stand down and prepare to be boarded or we'll destroy what's left of your fleet. Grakthor stared at the human admiral. He'd thought the Concordat was weak because they avoided decisive action. Now he understood it wasn't weakness. It was mercy. A luxury only the truly powerful could afford. The humans weren't weak, and they didn't avoid decisive action. We surrender, Grakthor said, defeated. On New Horizon, the colonists emerged from shelters to see their 3 frigates limping back to orbit, battered but intact. Behind them, the Concordat vessels and the Earth fleet stood guard. Commander Santos sat in her damaged ship and felt tears on her face. They'd held the line. Against impossible odds, they'd protected the colony, and the Concordat had stood with them. 2 weeks later, the Concordat Council voted unanimously to make humanity not just members, but co-defenders of Concordat space. The Battle of New Horizon had proven that humans didn't just have power, they had the will to use it to protect others. 5 years passed. The alliance between humanity and the Concordat flourished. Humans shared their antimatter technology with species brave enough to learn it, carefully, gradually, with extensive safety training. The Vryn and Mulkor were the first to attempt it successfully. Trade routes expanded, human colonies spread across dozens of worlds, always in coordination with Concordat species. Joint military patrols protected everyone's borders. Conflicts across the galaxy dropped by 90%. Pirates and raiders learned that attacking any Concordat world meant facing humans, and no one wanted to face humans in battle. Admiral Chen, now Concordat Joint Defense Commander, stood in the war room aboard the rebuilt Central Sphere. Around her, military commanders from 20 different species reviewed the latest intelligence. Something's moving in dark space, the Vryn sensor specialist reported. Large fleets. Unknown configuration. They're not using standard drive signatures. Chen studied the data. A new threat, something that had been hiding beyond explored space, watching and waiting. How long until they reach Concordat territory? She asked. 3 months if they maintain current speed. Chen nodded slowly. She looked around the room at alien faces that had become familiar. Allies, friends. People who'd stood with humanity when they didn't have to. Then we have 3 months to prepare, she said calmly. Alert all fleet elements. Begin defensive preparations. And someone contact Commander Santos at New Horizon. Tell her the line might need holding again. She pulled up a holographic display showing the entire Concordat. 47 species, now including humanity. Thousands of worlds, trillions of beings, all protected by their combined fleets. 5 years ago, the galaxy had blinked when human warships demonstrated their power. They'd thought humanity would be conquerors or destroyers. Instead, humanity became protectors. Not because they had to, because they chose to. Whatever was coming from dark space would face not just human antimatter weapons, but something more powerful. An alliance of species who'd learned to stand together. Admiral Chen smiled slightly. Let them come. The galaxy had learned its lesson about underestimating humanity. Now any enemy would learn why everyone else had decided to fight alongside them instead of against them. The line in the stars held firm, and humanity stood at its center, not as masters but as equals among friends. That was the real power, not the antimatter, not the weapons. The choice to use overwhelming force to protect rather than conquer. The galaxy had blinked and everything changed, and humanity had shown them what it meant to be strong and good at the same time.